We all have significant moments that become significant memories, like learning to ride a bicycle for the first time. Unfortunately, those significant moments are not always positive. I'll never forget the day that my wife came up to me and said, "It's showing 2 lines." That was the day that I found out that we were pregnant. My reaction? I was scared. In a moment that should have been one of the most exciting times of my life, I was horrified. Because I knew that we were not doing well financially. And that was the day I found out exactly how bad, and it scared me like crazy. I don't know if anybody's ever looked into something and you know that it can't be good, like it's not good. But the deeper you look, it's actually a little bit worse than you might have even thought. That's what I discovered that day. I thought that, yeah, I knew things didn't feel quite that nice, but I found out through digging that I wasn't just a few $1,000s in debt. I was $53,000 in debt with a new baby on the way. Life is interesting. It gives us these opportunities. And when we have opportunities like this that are unexpected, that challenge us, we're given a choice. The first choice is we could ask, WTF, why me? Or we could ask, what comes next? What am I going to do with this situation? What can I do differently? Now, I grew up in a large polygamous family. I have 4 moms and 44 brothers and sisters. Yes, 4 moms, 1 dad, 44 brothers and sisters. No, I'm not joking. It still happens. And yes, I know that can bring up some questions, but that's a TED Talk for another day. So growing up in this upbringing, though, besides some seemingly obvious setbacks or downsides to it, there were perhaps some not so obvious benefits. Certainly, you were never alone. You always had people around. But another thing was, I was actually homeschooled all through high school. And the benefit around that, what it developed in me, is this skill to figure stuff out on my own. I knew that everything must be figure-outable. And that was the day when I couldn't avoid it anymore that I said, I'm going to do something different. I don't know how right now. I don't know how. But I have to believe it can be done. And so I dug into everything that I could around money. Anything to do with business, finance, entrepreneurship, personal development. But I couldn't just learn about it this time. I really enjoyed learning. I had to start applying it so that I could get a different result. And as I was trialing and erroring and applying these different things, a little method started to emerge. An idea. And this little idea was starting to change me in every way. The way I behaved, the way I thought. Now, when I first projected how soon I should be able to get out of debt, the number was 12 years with the level of income that I was making and how deep in debt that I was. But as I stand before you today, I am happy to say that I have since become officially debt-free for the first time in my entire adult life. And it happened a decade earlier than was initially projected. because of this one simple idea. Do you want to know what it is? Great. I'm glad that you do, because after all, that's why we're here. So, it's something that I call the prosperity loop, and it changed my life forever. To get into the prosperity loop comes in 3 steps. I'll define these terms for you quickly. The 3 steps are prepare, protect, and place. So the first step is prepare. For whatever reason, as human beings, we are really good at preparing in most areas other than money. Even Californians, for whatever reason, the weather is perfect there almost all year round. It almost never rains. They still have roofs on their house. Heard about this? Like, it's crazy. I have no idea why. Or closer to home where I come from, like some people are really good with food storage. Like my neighbors in Salt Lake City, really big on food storage. The apocalypse is coming, 20 years of food storage minimum. But for whatever reason, we have not prepared very well with our money. The first step into getting into the prosperity loop is simply saying this: it's going to rain. Bring an umbrella. Have an emergency fund with your money. Now, many experts agree that a common good starting point for your emergency fund is $1,000. So if you have that, that's where you can start. $1,000 set aside for emergencies. Keyword being emergency, meaning it could not have been planned for. So you're putting money aside for when it does rain, not if, but when. Now, for those of you that don't have $1,000 to put into an emergency fund, great. Then your step is to open up the account for the emergency fund anyway. Why? Because intent precedes the result. And so when you open up the bank account, you now have your goal. That's your first target. Get to 1,000. Step 2, protect. Imagine, if you would, that I'm holding up a pail of water. There's a hose putting water into the bucket, and there's holes at the bottom of the bucket, and it's leaking out. Now, if I were to ask you exactly how much water is leaking out of this bucket, it'd be really freaking hard to find out about that. Why? Because there's water coming in and water going out. The only thing we can actually measure is like the fluctuations in the pail of up and down, right? Here's what this pail represents. This is most of our checking account. We have one checking account where money goes in, and we have money leaks of money going out. Automatic payments for like mortgage, car insurance, car payment, credit card payments, and all that type of stuff. Now, there's nothing wrong, there's no problem by itself with having automatic payments, right? That's convenient. But what is a problem is when both of those functions are happening at the same time, in the same checking account. Why? Because you have no idea what is really happening and how much you are actually spending. The only thing you actually can see is the fluctuations of the ups and downs in that checking account. This is something that I did not know, and when I discovered it, it blew my mind. You have no idea how many of us, on average, are leaking money and don't even know it. It's completely dangerous. Like imagine, hopefully it's never happens, imagine you were actually stabbed. Like you don't know how it happened, but if that happened, you would need to go to the hospital, right? Like that'd be a pretty serious thing. But what if not only were you bleeding, but the blood was invisible? Well, that is kind of a crazy example physically. For most of us, that is happening financially, where we are bleeding money and don't even know it. So, how do we remedy this situation? Really simple and radically at the same time. What you're going to do is separate the functions of income and outgo. So, what you're going to do is literally open up a second checking account whose main function, only function, is to hold money that, as far as you're concerned, is already spent. It's where all of your automatic payments go. What it's going to do is it's going to give you the peace of mind saying, okay, my rent is in there, my automatic payment's in there. It's not an account that you necessarily accumulate money in. It's a place that you know because you put it there, it's accounted for, and you're good. It's not money you can touch. That account is considered a black hole. So not only is that going to give you peace of mind, it's now going to give you way more control over your money. Because what you did in that scenario is you plugged all of the holes in your main income account. Because here's the thing. No one, and I mean no one, should have access to your main income account but you. Now then, what do? The third step is place. The goal of placing is this. When you're done doing your finances, your goal is to get that main income account to zero. Yeah, your goal is to get that account to zero. Now, what are you getting it to zero for? What's it for? Anything that you spend money on, food, transportation, any date account, anything that you would normally spend money on, you are placing it and putting it in an area where it goes in advance. And why are we doing that? Because there's a long lost secret with money, and it's this. Money is meant to have a purpose. Money, as some of you I know are going to attest to this, is also slippery. And when we don't give our money a purpose, it slips through our fingers and finds a new owner. So what placing is doing is literally giving every single dollar a purpose. I remember when I first shared this idea with one of my students, Jane, and she was like, okay, I think I'm getting this. So to get into this prosperity loop thingy, you have to first prepare, got my emergency fund, then separate your income from your outgo so that you have no surprises, your main income's protected. And what you're then saying is, I take my money, and instead of doing all of these small isolated payments that I've been doing that accumulated together create a big problem, I can take all this big chunk of money and spend it all at once? Yeah, that's exactly right. She said, I can get good at this. And yes, you can. It's like a hack. But it's not just like budgeting. A budget is just a plan on paper. Here's how it's different than that. Imagine, a few of us have maybe a couple pounds still that we want to lose weight on, right? Imagine if you know that to lose a few pounds, here are the calories that you need to eat over the next 2 weeks. What if when you were dieting, if you could say, I'm going to eat all of these calories that are for the next 2 weeks right now so that I can't mess up? That'd be pretty wild, right? Unfortunately, as far as I know, that has not been invented yet for dieting. What's really amazing and insanely cool, though, is that is possible with money. What placing every dollar is doing is essentially saying, this is what I need to do over the next couple of weeks, and you're spending it then, right then, so that you cannot mess up. Now, around this point is when people normally ask, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to place it all at once in advance, but how much should I put towards all these different areas, like food and transportation? And how does taking from one area affect another and all these things? And when you start asking those questions, congratulations. You have arrived. You are in the prosperity loop. You see, what I learned through this journey is it wasn't that I was just completely dumb and was a bad person. That's not why I was in debt and going backwards. I learned that I was making really good decisions for the short term. And what the prosperity loop is doing is it's forcing you in a really cool way to start changing everything about you, your behavior, your mindset, and everything for the long term. Now, there's some people that might say, yeah, but aren't we just still talking about money? I mean, of course, money's not everything. And I'll agree with you, by the way. Money isn't everything. But there's a really cool quote by a guy named Zig Ziglar that resonated a lot with me when I first heard it. And he said, money isn't everything, but it ranks up there with oxygen. Money isn't everything, but it touches everything. And when you get into the prosperity loop and get in the habit of making decisions for the long term, it won't just affect your money, it'll affect every single area of your life. Several decades ago, in the late 60s, early 70s, there was this study done at Stanford University known as the marshmallow experiment. They brought children in and were given two choices. You could eat the marshmallow right now, or you could wait and get two. They followed up with those children decades later into adulthood, and researchers wanted to know, is there a difference in the way they fared in life from the ones that were able to wait and the ones that just ate the marshmallow? The results were staggering. The ones that waited and got two marshmallows scored higher in literally every single area that they measured. They had better relationships, their marriages lasted longer on average, they had lower rates of anxiety and depression, less anxiety medication stuff. They were less likely to have drug and alcohol abuse, and no surprise, they were doing better financially because they were now thinking more in the long term. This study is more recognized as something that shows what happens when you have delayed gratification. But when you dig into the data, the kids say, it wasn't hard, I just made the best decision for myself, and as adults, I made the best decision for myself in the long term. So where do we go from here? Call me idealistic, but I believe that if you're in this room, or if you're watching somewhere on the internet, that you're here because you have a gift to share with the world. And we have so many people that if you look to, the only people we actually remember in this world are people that stepped out and shared their gifts. And there's something that Steve Jobs said that particularly resonates with me at this point. He said, if you look around at everything that you call life, it was made up by people that are no smarter than you. And that you can change it, you can mold it, you can create your own things for other people to use. And when you realize that, your life will never be the same again. So my hope, my vision, my dream is that by getting into these gifts, having the freedom and the prosperity, not only will you have the freedom and the peace of mind that you have around money, but you'll also have the courage to step out and share your gifts with the world, because we need you. Thank you.